Welcome everyone to the what month is it? March monthly conversation on abolition, transformation, and faith formation, the current congregational study action issue of the Unitarian Universalist Association. I am the Reverend Dr. Michael Tino, a co-lead minister of the Church of the Larger Fellowship. And the Church of the Larger Fellowship is the lead sponsor of this congregational study action issue, and we have been working in partnership with the Commission on Social Witness to help congregations study this and do the work of congregational study action. And that is why the Church of the Larger Fellowship is hosting tonight's webinar. There was some confusion about that last month, and so we thought we'd clear that up right from the top. Aisha, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Aisha Hauser. My pronouns are she and her, and I am in Seattle, Washington. And I have the absolute privilege of being the second half of the co-lead ministry team of the Church of Larger Fellowship. It has been truly an honor to sponsor this CSAI and do all the work and work closely with Nancy Reed McKee, who is also on this call. Um, yeah, so we should we have Nancy introduce?
Absolutely.
Yes, Nancy.
Hey everyone. I'm Nancy Reed McKee. I'm in Olympia, Washington, right near Asia. And I am currently the chair of the Commission on Social Witness, and really trying to just help get the word about this CSAI so we can do due diligence to our duty to our congregations who selected this as a study action issue. So I appreciate everyone being here.
And we are recording this. So if we go to breakout rooms, we will not record the breakout rooms. And it will be sort of our collective call whether we need to go to breakout rooms or not, or whether we can have a large group conversation. There reaches a point when there will be enough people here that it might be nice to have some conversations in breakout rooms. And again, they won't be recorded. But we are recording these monthly conversations because, as you will learn in a few minutes, all of these monthly conversations are recorded. We edit the recordings and put them on the Abolition website so that other people can use this resource, people who can't make it tonight. And for this one, people who can't make it tonight. But for the other conversations, we hope that congregations might actually watch the video together and discuss it when we go into breakout rooms, because we usually do give people a discussion question and go into breakout rooms with that. So just to reiterate that we're recording, and that is why. So please don't say anything that you don't want posted on the web and available to the public. We will not be restricting access to the recording to UUMA and Loretta members, because I don't even know how we would do that. So, and we didn't restrict registration to this webinar either to members of our professional organizations, even though that's going to be our focus tonight, is how we engage as religious professionals of various types, religious educators and ministers and administrators and music directors. And I don't even know who all is here. And I guess we'll learn that in a minute. All the various things that we do in our congregations and community organizations, and affiliated with congregations and covenanted communities. So thank you. Aisha, you want to start us off?
Yeah, first, yes, what are going to do is we'll put in the chat where you can find the recordings and actually the entire abolition page. There it is. Where I want to start is I think what I'd like to do is just jump in. So you could, if you can, type your name and where you are, and if you choose your role. But I also want to ask, what questions are you coming with? What is it that you are hoping to that we addressed it? Like if we had newsprint, I would be writing it on newsprint. What do you hope we would be talking about today? So let's imagine newsprint. Because what we want to do is when the CSAI first passed in June, I immediately got a call from a minister who's like, okay, how do we talk about this? Like right now, I need something. And we hadn't even talked, I mean, literally just passed. I'm like, friend, give me a day. Like, what is happening? Um, and I sent folks to Miriam Kaba. We do this till we free us. It's an accessible book. It's short. It's a good book read to talk about what it means to reframe even the word abolition. So what it would be helpful is, thank you, those who are writing who you are and where you're from. So Patrick McLaughlin says, looking for what I can take to educate and inform the congregation. Great. And Alana from Edmonds, also Washington State represented in the House, and Midwest and a lot of places, East Coast. So what Michael and I will be doing is actually screen sharing and taking you through the website, because there's a lot of information there, and maybe kind of getting to navigate it with us. We can answer your questions in real time, and you could use, there is a plethora of information. Plethora, is that the correct way of using the word plethora?
Yep.
Of resources. So sometimes it's so much. This happened with Tapestry of Faith many years ago. Like it was so much that people were like, it's too much, it's a fire hose. So we thought it would be helpful for us to gather and we go through it with you all, and then you can ask questions in real time, like how to use this. What are the ways you can work through this. So I'm hoping to lead a series on the topic in the fall. We have lots of stuff there that'll help you, looking for ways to spark abolition spirit, thinking, and action in congregations. Yes. Okay, so if you have not attended any of these, welcome. We have some exciting and interesting stuff to talk about. So, Michael, do we want to start screen sharing, or do you want to keep going first?
Yeah, let's start with the website, shall we? This is, if you go to clfuu.org/abolition, this is our Abolition, Transformation, and Faith Formation website. And we begin, as you can see, if you can see the screen share, by giving a little brief introduction to abolition. And we actually hope that people will engage with the work of abolition, not just as prison abolition, but as a larger framework that talks about theology, and that talks about what is it that we as Unitarian Universalists believe about sin and punishment and redemption and repentance and repair, that talks about how it is that we need to build a society in which the current prison industrial complex is not necessary. Not just close it down, which again I think would be better than what we have now, but we want to make it unnecessary. So a little introduction to the holistic approach to systemic social change that we're talking about when we say abolition. And then we have ways that people as individuals, congregations, and organizations can support this and begin, and ways that people and congregations can engage with the congregational study action issue. We've chosen 3 things as places to start, because we figured that people needed various on-ramps to this. And those 3 things are, as Aisha mentioned, the book We Do This Till We Free Us by Mariam Kaba. Mariam Kaba, if you're not familiar with her, is one of the leading abolitionist thinkers, and just she invites you into this conversation in such a welcoming and accessible way that we thought that this book is basically like the Bible of introduction to abolition. And there is at least one online study guide available by the publisher, Haymarket Books. And so we're trying to collate resources on this website and not invent new ones. A lot of it. The second of the places to start are the Min's lectures from 2004. And if you're familiar with the Min's lectures, you know that this is a lecture series hosted by First Church of Boston. And in 2024, Jason Leiden, the minister at Second Unitarian Universalist in Chicago, gave the Min's lectures on abolition theologies. And the Min's lectures are linked here. And the wonderful thing about this is that Jason has actually written a study guide to his lectures. So he wrote us a study guide that we can use. And he hopes that people use it. They're really well done. They go into our history, 19th century Universalist history of prison abolition. It's really quite wonderful. And the third one is a sermon that I did that I'm taking on the road. You want me to come to your congregation and give this sermon? Just let me know. I'll do my best. I gave it in Columbia, Maryland this past weekend. And then on the right are next steps. And the next steps, as Aisha said, so hold your seats, are numerous. They are online resources. They are books that we can study together and read together, and web-based website resources that you can look through. And then finally are the past event recordings. We, in conjunction with the Commission on Social Witness, are putting together these monthly conversations, and we're really trying to take people deliberately through abolition in a way that makes sense. So the first two conversations with Antoinette Scully and myself were basically introductions to abolition. The next three conversations were about restorative justice practices. So Aisha did an introduction. Allison Aguilar Lopez Gutierrez McLeod in San Diego did one on restorative justice with children and youth. And Celeste Lebac and Xavier Graves from Oklahoma did one on how they apply these restorative justice principles in the justice system in Oklahoma. And this one will join it. The coming events are up at the top for people to register for. This is today. The next one, April 2nd, which is coming up soon. Actually, Jason Leiden is leading on Unitarian Universalist theologies of sin and punishment. So we're going to start a little series on theology and talking about theologies of various things. And Jason is on purpose starting us off on Maundy Thursday, on Holy Thursday, with the theologies of sin and punishment. He wanted to make it his practice of observance of that holy day to lead us into conversation about sin and punishment. And
Michael,
that is yes, go.
And I want to so I preached. You were in Columbia. I was in Portland a couple weeks ago, preaching on this, on Abolition CSAI. And the reading that I did from We Do This Till We Free Us got applause. So can I share that with the group? Like,
Please
I've never done a reading
and
gotten applause before. So I was like, now my sermon has a lot to live up to. So this is from an excerpt from We Do This Till We Free Us, Abolitionist Organizing and Transforming Justice. Today, more people are discussing and contemplating prison abolition than ever before. Decades of collective organizing have brought us to this moment. Some are newly aware that prisons, policing, and the criminal punishment system in general are racist, oppressive, and ineffective. However, some might be wondering, is abolition too drastic? Can we really get rid of prisons and policing altogether? The short answer, we can, we must, we are. Prison industrial complex abolition is a political vision, a structural analysis of oppression, and a practical organizing strategy. While some people might think of abolition as primarily a negative project, Let's tear everything down tomorrow and hope for the best. Prison industrial complex abolition is a vision of a restructured society in a world where we have everything we need: food, shelter, education, health, art, beauty, clean water, and more things that are foundational to our personal community and safety. Some people may ask, does this mean that I can never call the cops if my life is in serious danger? Abolition does not center that question. Instead, Abolition Act challenges us to ask, why do we have no other well-resourced options? And pushes us to creatively consider how we can grow, build, and try other avenues to reduce harm. Repeated attempts to improve the sole option offered by the state, despite how consistently corrupt and injurious it has proven itself, will neither reduce nor address the harm that actually required that call. We need more and effective options for the greatest number of people. An abolitionist journey ignites other questions capable of meaningful and transformative pathways. What do prisons and policing actually do? Most people assume that incarceration helps to reduce violence and crime, thinking the criminal punishment system might be racist, sexist, classist, ableist, and unfair, but at least it keeps me safe from violence and crime. Facts and history tell a different story. Increasing rates of incarceration have minimal impact on crime rates. Research and common sense suggests that economic priority is correlated with higher crime rates. Moreover, crime and harm are not synonymous. All that is criminalized isn't harmful, and all harm isn't necessarily criminalized. For example, wage theft by employers isn't generally criminalized, but it is definitely harmful. A transformative justice movement led by Black, Indigenous, and people of color survivors has emerged in the past 2 decades to offer a different vision for ending violence and transforming our communities. A world without harm isn't possible, and it isn't what an abolitionist vision purports to achieve. Rather, abolitionist politics and practice contend that disposing of people by locking them away in jails and prisons does nothing significant to prevent, reduce, or transform harm in the aggregate. It rarely, if ever, encourages people to take accountability for their actions. Instead, our adversarial court system discourages people from ever acknowledging, let alone taking responsibility for, the harm they have caused. At the same time, it allows us to avoid our own responsibilities to hold each other accountable, instead delegating it to a third party, one that has been built to hide away social and political failures. An abolitionist imagination takes us along a different path than if we try to simply replace the prison industrial complex with similar structures. None of us has all the answers, or we would have ended oppression already. But if we keep building the world we want, trying new things and learning from our mistakes, new possibilities emerge.
Thank you. So I see a lot of questions in the chat about simply engaging congregations with the congregational study action issue. And I think that Nancy is here. So Nancy, I hope you're taking notes. A part of our job as leaders, as religious professional leaders of various stripes, is to introduce this concept of the congregational study action issue to our congregations. I believe, and Nancy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that this is the first one that we've done since the pandemic began, if not longer than that. It used to be that this was an ongoing process. So people who were tuned in to what was happening at UUA and General Assembly, like, expected one all the time. What was the last congregational study action issue, Nancy? Do you know off the top of your head? Before your time on the Commission on Social Witness.
Yeah, I don't remember. I don't even remember what it was on. Sorry, my brain doesn't work that
No,
well
it's
anymore,
it's all
but
it's
it's been
all
a
good.
while.
It has been a while since we've engaged in a congregational study action issue. And uh, for those of us who are like governance nerds, and I see you there, Patrick. For those of us who are governance nerds, the congregational study action issue leads to the statement of conscience, which is the only way that the Unitarian Universalist Association as a whole can take a stand on a social justice issue is through a statement of conscience. Actions of immediate witness are temporary. The last one on the website is from 2016. Thank you, Darby. So it's been a while, and it's not in people's muscle memory anymore. It's not in people's like brain memory. Oh, this is the pattern. So we need congregations to be engaging folks with this so that the Commission on Social Witness can write a, a statement of conscience that is accountable to the work of our congregations. Um, CLF will gladly help the commission, and they need feedback from the congregations in order to do this well. So does that like I am blessed to serve the Church of the Larger Fellowship, where this was our idea. So we don't actually have to like worry about whether people want to engage with it or not, because this is in part our way of being accountable to our 2,000 incarcerated members, in fact, which we now call members of the Church of the Larger Fellowship, almost 2,000. It's like 1,986 or something ridiculous like that. But we'll round that up to 2,000. And we started thinking about how it is that we express that accountability, and this came to the top of our screen. Is that we have to work toward abolition, and we have to push our association and our other congregations, our sibling congregations, toward abolition. So I'm blessed that I don't have to worry about that. So I'm going to throw this open to you all. Do any of you actually any of you had success in your congregations in engaging people with this topic and saying, "Hey, this is really interesting," and having people go, "Oh, that's really interesting. We want to do things." Could you share what you did with your fellow religious professionals? Nancy, I see your hand.
I just want to jump in and talk about how this is it's really it's critical that we figure out how to engage our congregations in this discussion. If you look at the AIWs that have been suggested in the last few years, I think that people are using AIWs instead of actions of immediate witness, and using turning them more into some of these bigger statements that people feel like we need to make as an association. So I think that there's a lack of avenues that congregants feel that they have in guiding the whole association into some of the bigger picture things that we want to see changed in the world. And I think that this CSAI is one of those steps of trying to get people to see that there's a big picture. That takes years of study and thought in order to implement, that we need to be part of. And we're finding very few congregations are engaging, even in the CSAI. So even looking in the chat, I'm not surprised that some congregations don't even know what this is any longer, when it used to be part of the ongoing work of our association to do this kind of work. So we're going to be doing some workshops at the GA this year, but it's a complicated GA to even do this work at, because of the fact that it's not going to be like in person so much. So any suggestions on how to engage congregations? We had hoped that these monthly sessions would do the trick. We're going to be putting out some even more coming up in terms of videos that people can access. But if people have suggestions on ways that we can get the word out about this, we would really welcome them, because this is the work to me of the congregants. And it's hard to get their attention on this.
Thank you. Julika?
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, I agree with you, Nancy. And part of the reason that I think it's hard is because I call abolition and reparations the two things that clear the room in anti-racism education. Like those are like, if I'm using the old college model, the 400 level conversations, they're much more complicated and challenging for people to have. And we have a problem in Unitarian Universalism where we sometimes get stuck in a loop of only talking about introductory level stuff. And we don't have the muscle, I think, I would say, to talk about the more challenging implications of changing systems where we actually have to give up some of our privilege. So I think Unitarian Universalists, many Unitarian Universalists have a lot of privilege and are comfortable if you keep them in a liberal place of talking about what is good and right about being liberal. But the conversation about abolition requires us to be radical and to have a moral imagination that is completely out of the framework of capitalism and other forms of other systems that are holding us in place and that are requiring us to live our lives in particular ways that prevents us from organizing and that prevents us from actually doing the work that that actually you sometimes see in Minneapolis. I'm very lucky to live in a town where there's a lot of challenging of that. So my soapbox is to name that. I think that if we say, hey, if you're new to the conversation, please come over here and have a conversation about covenant. Like, welcome. And this is how we talk to each other, and this is how we learn. And oh, hey, if you're new to this community, here are the places where we can connect with community leaders who actually know what the community needs. Let's learn how to follow. Would you like to come over here and learn how to do? Okay, now can we talk about abolition, reparations, redistribution of money, like things that really shift, things that really shift our frameworks at fundamental levels. So currently I serve as the lifelong learning manager of the UUMA. So it's my job to help colleagues continue to learn. So that's why I'm here. But when I was doing anti-racism coaching and consulting, I had a vision of trying to get congregations to understand that we need scaffolding in education. And I would be very interested in talking to colleagues who want to talk about how do we develop that scaffolding and how do we build spaces where abolition fits and it is resting on other skills and other learnings that need to happen first. End of soapbox. Thank you.
I see Mandy's hand.
Thanks. I'm glad you're lifting this up, Julika, because I'm serving in a new congregation now, as of this year, and I came in very excited about the CSAI, and the majority need is in exactly that. We need to learn how to follow spot right now. So I I do feel like part of the work for me as a religious professional is finding that balance of I'm in tension with where I'm stretching to personally and where I want to be, and bringing myself back to what is the the very next move in the congregation towards being able to take this up. And there are two places I feel like I've been able to make a little bit of inroad. One is because our minister went to Minneapolis, and coming out of that, people wanted to do some very tangible things. And there's a campaign very near to us to try not to have a new prison built. So we're able to make a very good connection there and do some legislative advocacy. And the other places with our young adults who have a different lens and perspective and are often coming from a very different financial lens too.
I see Patrick's hand.
So, when I was in New Hampshire, we struggled through on the death penalty in the state successfully, and I see that the far right free state libertarians are trying to undo that there. But in the process of doing that, I learned that I learned again that our congregants, perhaps because most of us don't grow up UU, weren't aware of the roots of the tradition. The fact that I had to go to the board and explain to them that I felt entirely free making public statements on behalf of the tradition and the congregation because we've been there since before Unitarian Universalism existed, that the Universalists were aggressively involved in prison reform, and that the improved condition of our prisons as they now exist is in part because of their efforts, and that we have been committed to these kinds of things for a very long time. And that moved people so far, so fast, that I was stunned. There were people on the board who were actually pro-death penalty who kind of stopped, and within a week were going, I have complicated feelings, but I guess this is who we are. So I would encourage starting people with that long-running start when you're trying to move the congregation. Here's who we've been for centuries, and we have been doing this kind of work, and this is a next iteration of that. And I've already gone and changed my plans. I'm going to preach on this in May, so that the congregation doesn't know the CSAI process.
Right.
Not just because it hasn't been around for a decade, but because this congregation's been very disconnected for a long time. So I'm going to weave in that history and the beloved community, which they've been hearing so much about, and say, this is what the beloved community would look like, right? So, I think that that's a place for congregations that are just trying to get started. And where do we come from? How do we claim this as what we need to be doing? It's not just what's going on now will help move people. It's, yes, that's the urgency of now, but this has been urgent for us for a long time.
Yes, thank you. And if you need a primer on that history, Jason's Min's lectures give you that, which is one of the reasons why we suggested you start there. He goes into that. If you don't know it, he'll teach it to you in an hour. It's really, really good. Kelly asked a question about the process of the CSAI, and it is important. The CSAI is a 3-year process that we are a year and a half into. The first year of the CSAI process is people proposing what they want the CSAI to be. That ended at General Assembly in Baltimore. Where were we? Baltimore. So year 2, we're now in year 2. And year 3 will be the year in which the statement of conscience is drafted and brought to General Assembly 2027 in San Jose. And now I'm sure that it has to be drafted by like February or March. So year 2 is a short year. So yeah, we have about a year left to really meaningfully engage with the statement of conscience. But I don't think that we ever run out of time to engage with an issue as important as this. And whatever the statement of conscience says, if we've sparked interest and lit fires for abolition in our congregations, we will have done a good thing. I know what I want the statement of conscience to say, and I don't think it's going to say everything that I want it to say. But I also just want to address the scaffolding and the on-ramps, and I think that there are lots of ways people can enter into this. It's one of the reasons why we started with restorative justice, because I think it's tangible in communities, and it's something that I think people can go, oh yeah, I believe in that. It's one of the reasons why we're following that up with theology, because I really think that Unitarian Universalists need to be clear about what is our theology that undergirds our beliefs, and what have our theologies been. And I will show you this. I am about to record this, so it will be on the website as soon as I record it. But I do a time for all ages when I preach on this, about my grandmother who stole a towel when she was on vacation in the late 1960s. She stole a towel from a hotel. And I know that she stole the towel because growing up in the linen closet of my house was this towel that says Holiday Inn in the middle of it. Right? My mother found me the towel from 1968 or whatever it was when my grandmother stole it. And the question is, did she deserve to be called the towel thief for the rest of her life? Did she deserve, no matter what else she did in her life, no matter how wonderful a person she was, to be labeled the towel thief in indelible marker? Did she deserve to, should she have had to place on every job application she filled out, on any new congregation she wanted to join, would she have had to announce, I'm the towel thief, and let them decide whether that was something they wanted to live with or not? And we can all laugh over the towel, and which is why I show it to you. But it is what our incarcerated members actually live with. It's what our incarcerated members actually live with. They are labeled forever. And this Unitarian Universalist theology actually support that indelible labeling of people. Do we make people disposable? Do we support, oh, they're a felon, so they shouldn't have a job, right? Or they've done X, Y, and Z, so we're not gonna let them into our congregation. Is that something that we want to support? Because I think most of us would say no. Right, right. Um, most of us would say no. And I think that like the answer no to that is a starting place for abolition. Um, so
I would
um,
say, oh yeah,
uh,
Kelly, did we answer your question about process?
Yeah, I mean, you trust the timeline. I do have like I do want to better specifically understand where the points of engagement are for the development of the statement at the end of this process, because that will help me better plan out how I support it with programming, right? If my people have a chance to get their input in, I need to know how to prepare my people to actually be in a position to make a positive contribution to that discussion.
So we did talk with one of the moderators, or both moderators, Kimberly Quinn Johnson and Bill Young. And Nancy, I believe we made a request to add another year to the CSAI so we don't vote until 2028, but I haven't heard anything, and maybe that's a pipe dream because it feels like we need more time. Have you heard anything about the status of that, or am I making that up in my head and I dreamt it? Nancy, we can't hear you.
I'm going to add the most recent official copy of the timeline for the CSAI into the chat. So if you look at that, and I'm just going to look through this. So we're in the second year cycle right now. So, and part of this changed because it used to be that we had the staff support to create these resource guides for the CSAI, and we no longer are doing that. We're using the Church of the Larger Fellowship's website as our resource guide. So we're right now on the second cycle year. And so the next step is that we're going to be conducting workshops on the CSAI at the General Assembly. And then by November 15th, the Commission on Social Witness has to prepare a draft statement of conscience to distribute to congregations, along with a comment form and a ballot to see if we can place this on the final agenda. And then in 2027, February 1st, is the deadline for the congregational ballots to be submitted so we can put it on the final agenda for the GA of 2027.
So it sounds like, and based on what Patrick just wrote, it may be a bylaws issue, and no one's putting that energy right now during the
yeah.
World War II.
The bylaws actually allow for another year of study.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
this is not the AIWs have very strict guidelines. The CSAI, well, I have to go back and read that. I'm sorry, I get so tangled up in all these things that keep on changing on me. But I think in order to change this so that we have another year of discussion, the board may be able to like temporarily amend that. And I believe Reverend Johnson was going to take that to the board, but I haven't heard back yet. But right
Yeah.
now we're on this trajectory that by November we have to have a statement of conscience drafted for congregations to start reacting to.
We'll know by this GA, but we will know, because Kimberly, I remember we talked about it at the last meeting with Kimberly, and that we all agreed it was not enough time. I want to also invite folks. Can I get off process for a minute, Kelly? Is that okay? In terms of the entry point, I would also one entry point or on ramp in terms of scaffolding is ICE. I think the things that ICE is doing, right? First of all, the detention centers are being run by the same for-profit prison system that is a cancer on our collective souls, let's be real. So those dots to be connected to what is most present. And what I appreciate about Mariam Kaba's work, and really, when folks take a holistic look about abolition in general, is why, first of all, everyone who's committed crime is not in jail, evidenced by everyone running the country right now. And people are, we criminalize poor people. We've criminalized poverty in this country since the beginning. Being poor means it is more likely, and being Black, being Indigenous, being disabled, more means that your risk of being in the carceral system is much higher. So there is an element of needing to expand our imaginations beyond control. And what I have been saying is this society is deeply punitive, and it is about reinforcing violent extractive capitalism. There are prisons, which I imagine most or all of you will know, that make things for corporations, right? So it is part of the extension of slavery. So do we want a society that centers control, which there's no such thing, there's only oppression through violence? Or do we want a society that cares? And an abolitionist worldview centers a society that cares, and that includes universal basic income, guaranteed housing, and universal health care. So to me, that is and when people say to me, that's unrealistic, I say, I'm going to stop you right there. The International Space Station is not realistic, but we do it. It's complicated, but we do it. We find the resources and the money. Sharing is not hard, and nor is it unrealistic. We just don't want to do it because the United States has decided some people are worthy and some people are worth less. And as Unitarian Universalists, we affirm people in the fullness of who they are. I reject the narrative of hardworking immigrants. People get to be treated with dignity because they are alive and exist. It doesn't matter what they produce. I'm not buying into the capitalist notion. So part of this discussion and part of the scaffolding is prison is one piece of this system that has been set up to privilege the wealthy, privilege white people, to privilege cisgender men. You all know the list of who's privileged, right? So it is also saying to folks, like what I say is, how come people who say, let's cage children, we find ways to do that. But when you say, let's feed children, suddenly that's a problem. We need to expand our imaginations for good. And that is also what Minneapolis is teaching us, is that mutual aid, know your neighbors. Seattle, we're literally teaching people how to talk to each other. I kid you not. Once a month, Ijeoma Luos is hosting dinner, lunches, and we're literally saying, here's how to talk to your neighbor. Say hello. Take a buddy with you. Get a dog. We don't tell people to get a dog, but like if you have a dog, walk in your neighborhood. But this is literally things that we can do in our congregations. Teach people how to talk to each other and get to know your neighbor. That is my soapbox.
Preach that truth. What was the third one? Universal healthcare, basic income?
Guaranteed housing.
Guaranteed housing. But there's a part. Can I chat?
Please.
When I first encountered abolition a few years ago, it pushed me, like it was very hard for me to grok. Everything that you say right now, I'm like, yeah. But that's because I've been studying abolition for a couple of years. That's because I made a commitment to like stretch myself. So there's another part here about accountability. And I'm really glad that you started with restorative justice, because that's the piece that I think is missing. So when you were talking earlier, Michael, about the towel thief piece, I truly believe that we are all more than the worst thing that we have ever done. But there's also a piece of me that doesn't know how to relate to people who have broken my trust. And there is a basic, maybe reptile brain desire to punish. You hurt me, I'm going to hurt you back. Like there's something there that needs retraining in me. Like I am upset. Currently, I'm upset at colleagues who misconduct. It's one of my pet peeves. And like how do we hold the person and the boundaries? when a person has demonstrated that they are untrustworthy. So I'm trying to name the barriers that people might have to getting all the way to the moral imagination. And I don't know if that's valuable or not, but
If I may jump in, absolutely it is valuable because it is what we've been conditioned into. And
right.
Mariam Kaba has a whole section in our book about we have to, part of this transformation and the invitation to think differently is to think about what are we attached to, because listen, I come from a grudge culture. I'm an Egyptian. I was born in Jersey. I mean, born in Egypt, raised in Jersey, and I'm a Scorpio. I had to
Oh boy.
unlearn a lot of immediate like revenge. Like this is part of, I had to unlearn a lot of it. And no, and we are faith leaders. This is exactly the grappling that we are invited into. How do we maintain our sense of self and be whole even when we have been harmed? I think that the thing, and I'm going to open up discussion, I'll stop talking, but I have, for myself, when I've been personally harmed, I have found that I have had to let go of the idea that somehow some punishment is going to make me feel better. And I think that's the fallacy, right? That somehow somebody, whatever it is, being in prison, whatever the consequences, that somehow that's going to make me feel better, and that's been a lie. That is a lie. It doesn't give us it's kind of like the reading I read, right? It doesn't give us an opportunity for accountability. It doesn't give opportunity. And I don't have to ever be friends again with someone who hurt me, even if they transform themselves. But what I could do is know that I have to heal regardless of whatever happens with that person. And that's the faith work. This is the work we're invited into, is to grapple with that discomfort, because we like bringing up white supremacy culture and people's immediate visceral reaction against that. We are inviting people into uncomfortable space, but it is necessary, frankly, to save our society. Yuri.
I am wondering that oftentimes in the religious spaces that I have, or the church that I used to be associated with, there are a few things. I guess one is the assumption that the justice-involved people or adjacent to justice-involved people are absent in the congregation. And also some kind of objectification when we talk about those people. And I think many of us probably also cheered for the politicians who were proud of being tough on crimes. So I feel like, Julika, what you have said, I really appreciate it, because there's a lot, and also Aisha yourself, this revenge, or they should pay for it, and a lot of this, not only in court, but also court of public opinions, how the people who had made some great mistakes had been trashed, and people are said, I hope you will never come out of prison, or even your life doesn't matter, the state should take your life, right? But also some of this punitive ideas are seeping into the way you sometimes make decisions, I think. So those places may also be a good place to look at and start. It may not be very comfortable because that is saying, oh, we thought we are abolitionists, but we are really not. But to me, before or at least simultaneously, we are talking about a bigger system. We need to be looking at who we are, how we do things. So that's my hope for this conversation to really spark. I've known a member of congregation who would never be able to talk to anybody, including the minister, about the justice involvement of the family member. And I have been part of a group welcoming the re-entering citizens, and we were afraid that somebody's going to find out and will divide up the congregation. I mean, if we are abolitionist congregation, that shouldn't happen, but I think it was very very real concern. I mean, and of course we don't want to objectify or the person shouldn't have become the spokesperson of re-entering citizens. So in a way, I also agreed to keep that secret, but I'm trying to do prison ministry, just such Brian Stevenson says you need to become proximate. And I felt it's just a lot of people are so far off, well-meaning, that might even be harmful to be part of that kind of ministry. So maybe look inside of ourselves. How do we feel? And how are we doing things? I mean, that's my hope, that this will also inspire, because otherwise it's all about somebody else. We feel so sorry for them, or I don't know what other things people might say, but it's actually closer than we think. But it's very hard to come out, in at least the congregation that I knew.
Thank you. Thank you, Yuri. Thank you for your work. Thank you for bearing witness to the struggles of justice-involved people. I appreciate what you do. And, one of the things that we at the Church of the Larger Fellowship have on our wish list, it will happen. It will happen sooner rather than later, is actually training for congregations on how it is that they can welcome people who are coming out of prison. Because frankly, we want our members to be welcomed in bricks and mortar congregations if they choose to attend them when they're released from prison. And so we need to train y'all. And so our learning fellow for prison ministry, Catherine Hoffman, is working on that in conjunction with the UU Prison Ministry of Illinois and the Reverend Allison Farnham, who's there. So it's happening. We want it like tomorrow, but it's not going to be tomorrow. It might be before the statement of conscience, though. Just know that it's in the works. Kat?
Thank you. I'm having a little cat interference from the other kind of cat, as you can probably tell. So this is such a complex subject, and I really did appreciate what Julika said about speaking in the 400 level course to people who haven't taken 100 yet. Um, I know, when we had the eighth principle that so didn't work for the people it was meant to help. I taught an eighth principle class for a congregation, and I was really shocked. First of all, by how few there were that actually did it, maybe 20 people, and where they were to start with. And I had to kind of like reset and start at some real basics about what oppression is. Um, I've had a person who was a Black history professor in a college say that, well, you have to police have to go to the places where there are broken windows. All of this, these are UUs. And the other thing, of course, is that I came from the West Coast and pretty much from university towns. And then here I am in the South. And I know that one of the things that I constantly get called on for or called out for is speaking as if I were talking to a graduate class. And so and I know better, I know that's really bad pedagogy. Um, the other question about trust, I think, was it Hulika I don't know if it was you who was talking about that would, um, so after giving up being a school administrator or adjunct faculty, which is talk about wage theft, what I did was I got another master's in counseling and psychology and became a counselor with a practice focusing on severe trauma. One of the aspects of people whose sense of self has been shattered is that they will intentionally do things, not intentionally consciously, but unconsciously, to get other people to set boundaries that they were never allowed to have. And so we have to respond to that by setting a boundary. But at the same time, that person who throughout childhood and youth was never allowed boundaries, I'll tell you this really applies to a lot of queer and trans kids, over the top applies to them, is that they also, the worst thing that can happen to them is rejection. And you get these at the same time. The need to set the boundary and to set it with love. And I keep thinking, all right, so I will do these things. I know they're what I must do. And then I forget how long it takes for it to work. And
Thank
how
you,
much.
Kat. We only have 25 minutes left. I want to make sure we get to as many comments as possible. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Douglas.
Thank you, Aisha. I um I'm not this is I hesitate because I don't really have a question. I just have like a whole lot of um I'm preaching on this on Sunday. And just to I heard Julika mention I'm preaching on reparations in May. And I didn't know I was ringing both bells when I set this up to myself in August. I thought this was a good idea. Um, One of the things that I do want to say I have going for me is that I've been in this congregation I'm preaching in for over 20 years. I have a whole lot of gravitas, like I can push things, and the congregation has been doing a lot with ICE and has been doing a lot of supporting with trans and queer folks. And just the past year or 2 years, we've really done a big push on housing. So the location of the context of where I'm serving in Binghamton, New York, our prison is doing support for folks that ICE picks up in New York City, and they get shipped out here to Broome County to be incarcerated, to be held. And so our prison has a whole lot of ICE abductees, and then we also have like the second highest rate of homelessness per capita next to the Bronx at this moment, per county. And so the context of what's going on around us has really, like, a lot of folks are waking up to what's going on. And I've been preaching a lot about forgiveness and a lot about liberation for the shift from liberal to liberation for a couple of years now. So I've done a lot of this groundwork, and honestly, I'm stunned by how holistic this conversation is around abolition. That, I saw this coming through GA, and I'm like, okay, prisons are bad. I agree. And so I'll get behind this. But then as I'm reading about it, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. This is also housing. Wait, this is also ICE. Oh, this is also right to like, I'd already clued in about how racism is so tangled up and poverty, but to like see how much this captures. Here's one thing I want to name happened in my congregation that lay leaders were able to offer, which is we've done a whole lot with healthy congregations and systems thinking and that relational stuff, covenantal stuff. And they hosted a conversation around police, just a listening circle. Like, what is your relationship to safety? And really, like, that was the question. And we had more than 30 people in the room, and we didn't get to do a full second round of response for everybody in the hour and a half that they'd set aside. Just how much that cracked open, because like we're trying to figure out how to respond to ICE, and will we call the police, and how do we provide sanctuary, and what does that look like? And it cracked open this big conversation around, like, what do you mean we'll never call the police? Okay, let's talk about this openly rather than behind each other's backs. And we listened to each other. We didn't come to an agreement. We haven't written a policy now, but we talked about it openly and disagreed with each other about it openly. And like, some things were said that were not smooth. But I think it was successful because it's open now. And I really commend that, as well as all of this work that we're doing around policies and bigger conversations, to also have these conversations about how do we, well, like you were saying about in Minneapolis, let's teach each other how to talk to our neighbors. Let's teach each other how to disagree about this important stuff that we say our values all align, and we have the same values, or at least enough of them, right? But we disagree about some things. So let's get closer on that, which is really,
Thank you.
It's an amazing thing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And, we don't have to agree on everything to have like a common theology that we're operating from, right? So thank you. Especially, so I want to point out in the chat that Julica has offered to host a follow-up conversation of community of practice space for conversation about the scaffolding that is necessary to help us. Thank you, Julica. Thank you. I'm always grateful for you. But give Julica your email address in the chat if you're interested in being part of that conversation. And I want to make sure that people who we haven't heard from have a chance to speak, which is like most of us right now. So if anyone has a question or a comment rather than a question. That's the Unitarian Universalist way, right? Please feel free. I see a hand from Leslie.
Yeah, I just want to share. We kind of started this conversation around security cameras, and then we got some hate mail, and one of them was it had some people scared, and so they wanted to call the police. And so I talked about like, the police in our area are not interested in the Unitarian Universalists at all. Like, but because we are mostly white, there is the assumption that the police are there to protect us. So the president of the board went with the letter to the police, and he was very disappointed in the service that he got. He said they didn't even want to take down any information. They wouldn't look up the person's number to see if, he'd ever had any other crimes. So I actually liked that he experienced the lack, that we're not going to get what we want there. So just a real life
And
example
thankfully,
of
thankfully, his life was not in danger uh, when he got to have that gut feeling of
yeah,
being abandoned.
right.
Yeah,
hmm
thank you. I'm looking around. People are mostly waving. Jill.
Yeah, I can just briefly share about my personal experience with digging in on abolition thinking was in a so far, and I'm very interested in this discussion, and I love the holisticness of it, and I love that we're going to engage with this as congregations, and I'm very curious to attend more of these. But one of the things that sticks with me is doing a somatic abolition circle, and at what First Universalist you look at, and it was lay-led and it was white-bodied people, and it was amazing. I could see it being a good friend to scaffolding because when you ask questions about, let's talk about your experience with the police and what happened in your body and what have you seen the police do and it's amazing. It was amazing what that cracked open. And then what has made you feel safe in your life? Those simple questions about real in your body experience, I think really had for what my experience a way of cracking this open about really what is safety in your life. So I just wanted to mention that in the space.
Thank you. And I am going to assume that whoever was leading that was deeply trauma informed in the way that they did it, because that could go really badly for some people too.
That's for sure.
Yeah. So if you're inviting something like that, make sure that the person you're inviting in has that deep trauma informed ministry knowledge, because that could be really, really, really powerful. Are there resources you wish were on this site? Not that you've all read it, the entire thing, and know what's there, but like one of the things that we're trying to do is actually collate resources that are useful to people. And so, like, if you could say, "Oh, my people really could use and I could say, "Oh, that book is there," or so there are. Leslie asks, "Are there times for all ages on the website?" There are children's books in the book list. Yes, and I am going to record my story about my grandmother, the Tallow Thief, so that they're Abolition is Love. Is that Mariam Kaba's children's book? No, it's not. So I think that's one of them that's there. Douglas is holding up a children's book called Abolition is Love. Mariam Kaba actually has written one or two children's books herself. Aisha says one by Catherine Otoshi. Oh yes, that's about bullying, kind of one. That's a good one. People are putting.
I have a
People are
really
put,
really
Douglas,
quick one. Like maybe about 20 years ago, some colleague of ours did a quick story that I remembered. Essentially, she had a lollipop and she gave everybody else, all the kids, a lollipop, and then she dropped her lollipop and she got a new one. And she's like, let's talk about disposable and are people disposable? And so I did that last Sunday and I dropped it into, we have an urn with sand that we put candles in for the joys and sorrows. And so I said, what if you were at the beach and dropped it? You can't just rinse that off on the water. And I dropped it into the sand and the whole congregation's like, so visceral, disposable people. Oh,
thank you. Yeah, I find like children get on a really fundamental level, how do you want to be treated when you do something wrong? Because usually they're not treated well or kindly, especially by school systems who are quick to go into punitive mode. But like when I talk about this with children, they get that. Like it's almost instant. So, and Mandy says prisons must fall is, I believe, one of Mariam Kaba's children's books. I think she has 2 or 3 now. So people are putting more books in here. I'm going to save this chat to make sure that we have all those on our list. Thank you. So, resources to engage multi-generational community. I've heard that request. And children's books are just the tip of how we engage multi-generational community. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert lecturing a bunch of religious educators on how to do that. So I'll shut up now. Other things that you would like to see on the website.
I'm curious to see how incarcerated CLF members talk about this subject.
Well, that's this pile of mail. There are 2 books under this pile of mail, but literally this pile of mail are letters from our incarcerated members talking about this subject that I have to go through and read and share with you all. But it's a lot of mail, as you can see.
Thank you.
So it will happen again. If one of you like has funding or access to it to go through that, that's all good. All good. There's only so much time. Well, thank you so much. Thank you all for being here tonight then. I so very much appreciate this conversation. I hope that you got something out of it. I hope you got some tips. Julika is willing to help with scaffolding. Aisha and I are available at CLF, and there's a contact us form right on that website. If you need help, if you have suggestions, you got a guest preacher on each coast, so
You sure do. Yeah, that's what Allison Miller from Portland called me and said, come preach about this. So yeah. Thank you all for being here. Please reach out to us. I posted Miriam Kaba's discussion guide because it really is good and like a great primer. It starts with what do you consider safe? What is safety?
Yep.
Right. So yeah, thank you all so
which
much.
is again one of the questions that people ask in their community, right? So thank you.